The day began like any other. Passengers boarded the flight, some traveling for work, others for family, and a few simply seeking adventure. Laughter, conversations, and the soft hum of the engines filled the cabin as the aircraft climbed higher into the sky. At 30,000 feet, everything felt normal, safe, routine, and calm. But then, without warning, the peace shattered. A sudden jolt shook the aircraft. The overhead lights flickered once, then went out completely. Within seconds, the deep roar of the engines vanished, replaced by an eerie silence. The plane had lost all power. Gasps and screams erupted through the cabin. Flight attendants tried to calm the passengers, but even their faces revealed fear. Oxygen masks dropped from above, swinging wildly in front of terrified travelers. Mothers pulled their children close. Businessmen gripped their seats tightly, unable to hide their panic. Inside the cockpit, the situation was even worse. Both pilots struggled to restart the engines, but nothing responded. Alarms blared, red lights flashed, and controls went dead. Then, to make matters more terrifying, the captain collapsed, leaving the co-pilot barely conscious and unable to continue. In the main cabin, panic spread like wildfire. People prayed loudly, some cried uncontrollably, while others sat frozen in shock. Everyone believed this was the end. And then, from row 17, a quiet but steady voice broke through the chaos. I can help." Heads turned. Standing in the aisle was a simple woman, dressed plainly, with nothing about her that suggested she belonged in a cockpit. She looked nervous, but her eyes were sharp with determination. The chief flight attendant rushed to her. "Ma'am, please sit down, it's dangerous." But the woman cut her off. "Listen, I've flown before, not a big jet like this, but I know enough. If you don't let me try, we'll all die." Her words silenced the crowd. Even the flight attendants exchanged uncertain glances. It sounded impossible. How could an ordinary woman know what to do when trained pilots couldn't? But with the captain unconscious and the co-pilot unable to continue, there was no other choice. "Follow me," the attendant finally said, leading her toward the cockpit. Passengers whispered in disbelief. Some muttered prayers, others scoffed. But deep down, every single soul on that plane carried the same hope, that somehow this woman from row 17 could perform a miracle. As she stepped into the cockpit, the sight of blinking alarms and lifeless controls made her heart race. She had only seconds to decide. Taking a deep breath, she slid into the captain's seat, her trembling hands hovering over the controls. Behind her, the crew watched with desperate eyes. In the cabin, hundreds of lives hung in the balance, and as the powerless plane continued its silent fall, the fate of everyone now rested in the hands of a simple woman no one had noticed before. The cockpit was filled with red warning lights, shrill alarms, and the heavy silence of fear. The woman from row 17 took a shaky breath, gripping the controls. Her heart pounded, but her mind was steady. She remembered her past. Her late husband had been a flight instructor, and years ago she had practiced on smaller planes. She never thought those lessons would matter again. But now, they were the only hope. "Control, this is Flight 237. The captain is down, engines are dead, a passenger is at the controls." Her voice trembled as she spoke into the radio. For a few seconds, static filled the air, then a firm voice replied, "Copy that, Flight 237. Stay calm. We'll guide you step by step. You must keep the nose level and maintain glide speed. Do you understand?" "Yes," she whispered, hands tight on the yoke. The plane was dropping fast, the altitude decreasing with every second. Passengers in the cabin held hands, praying, whispering names of loved ones, bracing for impact. Mothers rocked their children, men clenched their teeth, and even the bravest felt tears. Yet somewhere in their hearts they placed all their faith in the stranger who had dared to step forward. She followed the instructions carefully. "Ease back, steady, wings level," the voice from air traffic control said. Her knuckles turned white, but she obeyed every word. Slowly, the wild shaking of the aircraft began to steady. The co-pilot, weak but conscious enough to assist, pointed to a faint strip of land ahead. "There, emergency airfield. Her eyes locked on it. It looked impossibly small from this distance, but it was their only chance. Minutes felt like hours. Sweat rolled down her forehead as she guided the massive jet lower and lower. Every move was a battle against fear, gravity, and doubt. At one point, the left wing dipped dangerously, and gasps filled the cabin. But she quickly corrected it, whispering to herself, "Not today, not like this." Finally, the runway was in sight. The radio voice guided her. "Lower the flaps, pull back gently and let the plane glide." The wheels screeched as they touched the runway. The aircraft bounced once, then again, sparks flying as the brakes screamed. Passengers cried out, holding their breath, until, at last, the plane came to a grinding halt at the end of the strip. For a moment, silence. Total silence. Then a roar of cheers, applause, and tears filled the cabin. Strangers hugged each other, parents kissed their children, and the flight attendants collapsed in relief. The woman sat frozen in the cockpit, her hands still gripping the controls. She had done it. Against every odd, she had landed a powerless jet and saved hundreds of lives. When she finally stood, the crew and passengers surrounded her. To them, she was no longer just a simple woman in row 17. She was a hero. News spread worldwide within hours. Headlines called her the miracle passenger, but when reporters asked her how she managed, she only smiled.